News from out of the blue. The Blu Room. People who have used the Blu Room have experiences. They have stories to tell. And these are just a few of those stories. And some of these stories come with before and after records, because these individuals made use of the medical system to get information about the condition of their body. And then they were able to use that data to build a treatment plan, some of which included allopathic medication, frequency medicine, shamans, and of course, daily focus. Because these are individuals who discovered that they had a reason to focus. It wasn't just for funsies on Sunday anymore, because their life was in the balance sometimes. Or sometimes they just got fed up and said, you know, I'm really done with this. What's going on? Now what am I going to do about it? So, for all of you that have stories from the Blu Room and you have medical records, great. Take them to your Blu Room owner so they can be shared. And if you don't have medical records and you can get them, great. Because the Blu Room is the future technology of health. It's not present technology, but 40 years from now, maybe sooner this time, there'll be a National Geographic cover story when National Geographic changes their border from yellow to blue, a special edition. And you can help with that. And if you've had esoteric experiences that can't be documented by, x-rays or blood work, tell the story anyhow. Because everybody loves a good story. And it's your story, so it's your truth. And there's no reason to be embarrassed about it. It doesn't matter about the other folks and what they say about your story. How would they know they're not you? So please, work with your local Blu Room. Make that journey. Make that little extra effort for the future. It'd be your contribution to ongoing research. All right. Oh yes, brief disclaimer. These are personal testimonials. Your results may vary. These statements tonight have not been evaluated by the FDA yet. I'm making a list for them. One day they're going to be asking, and we'll have it. This is Rosa from Italy. Rosa Nadali has just turned 80. She started the Blu Room this past August in 2016 because she had shoulder pain and general discomfort. She was doing 2 to 3 sessions per month, and her pain level dropped from 7 to 3. Now, Rosa, around her birthday each year, goes and gets a physical and lab work because she wants to know what's going on with her body. In November of 2015, that'd be well over a year ago, her vitamin D level was 8.2. Now that's after a summer in Italy up in the mountains, and that's really, really low. In November of 2016, after having done 9 Blu Room sessions, she went to her annual physical, and her vitamin D lab work was 46.7. That's right in there with adolescence. Now, I have been advised that as we age, our skin is less able to take in ultraviolet radiation from the sun and convert it into that lovely vitamin D and send it off to the liver and kidneys to do what they do. Particularly as we get, well into elderly geriatric age, apparently the skin doesn't work the way it used to when we were younger and younger. Well, nobody told Rosa. And I haven't heard that she was wearing a bikini. I don't imagine so, but it wasn't necessary, because the Blu Room is not just about ultraviolet radiation. It's esoteric. It's otherworldly. It's a portal from elsewhere. And it creates real change here. And Rosa has the lab work to prove it. So 2015, November 3rd, in the upper right corner, you'll see there's the date, the 3rd of the 11th month, 2015. Rosa's still smiling, but down at the bottom in the center, you'll see that her vitamin D level is 8.2, and the normal range is 16.1 to 50. So she's not just deficient, she's like scraping the bottom of the barrel. That was in November of 2015. Unperturbed, Rosa continues on. And then in August of last year, a few months before her annual checkup, she does 9 Blu Rooms, 2 or 3 a month. And on the 4th of November in 2016, her blood work is taken, and there she is, 46.7, well into the normal range. And the only difference, apart from daily focus and attitude, was she added in some regular Blu Room. Now, you can go and get your vitamin D tested here in the United States, particularly here in Washington State. It's not covered by insurance unless you have a prescription, an order from a physician. But you can go online and purchase your own low-cost vitamin D test and get it done at the local lab, and you can track your own vitamin D levels. And you can do that 2, 3, 4 times a year and find out what's going on with what Jay-Z calls the God vitamin. Because vitamin D does a lot of things. And the Blu Room, even if you're fully clothed and well into your 70s, will affect your body's ability to synthesize vitamin D out of the blue. Just briefly, nudge your neighbor and say, "Can you believe?" Can you believe? Or do you have an attitude? Is there hope? Can you say it? Is it possible that the Blu Room isn't just about ultraviolet lights? That the Blu Room really is something more than that from elsewhere? And we'll get into that. But first, another example. Astigmatism. How many of you don't know what astigmatism is? Don't know? Very few. How many of you know because you've got it? There you go. All right then. I had to look it up. I've heard of stigmata. I had to look that up too, but at least I'd heard of it. This is not stigmata. This is astigmatism. It's a condition in which the eye doesn't focus light evenly onto the retina, which is the light-sensitive tissue at the back of the eye. The cornea of a normal eye is curved like a basketball. That worked for me. With the same degree of roundness in all the areas of the cornea. An eye with astigmatism has a cornea that's curved more like a football, with some areas that are steeper or more rounded than others, and this can cause images to appear blurry and stretched out. So for those of you that have never had astigmatism, just imagine looking through a football, a glass football. There is no cure for astigmatism. You can get glasses that'll correct, you can get contacts that will correct, you can get laser surgery that may work. There's things that can be done, but in and of itself, there's no cure, and it's progressive, typically, especially in older readers and visual people, which is all of us, mostly. Now, hope. Emilio Magni, a beautiful Italian student, some of you may know him, has had strong astigmatism for 20 years. However, after 12 Blu Room sessions, 3 sessions at 3 minutes, 3 sessions at 6 minutes, 3 sessions at 9, 3 sessions at 12, Emilio's astigmatism is greatly reduced. His doctor was very surprised. Emilio's corneas are in excellent condition with no haze. The doctor has changed his glasses to much lighter lenses. So here's a fine example. You're not seeing well, doc, there's something wrong with my eyes, test me out. It's like, oh yeah, here's the problem, go get some glasses, thank you very much. Time passes. Doc, my glasses aren't like they used to be. Doc figures, yeah, it's time to get stronger glasses, let's test your eyes. Like, oh, we need to give you lighter lenses. That's weird. Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing. So be that. And he brought his eye exams to his local Blu Room to say, look, I focused on the Blu Room, I went and I did the Blu Room with my blinders on. His blinders were on to protect his eyes. But the Blu Room is esoteric. Below are the corneal tomography, that's the technical term for optometrists in the audience or watching online, for March 2015 and January 2017. In the 3 millimeter zone, that would be right around the center of where you look. The top boxes circled in green, you can see that the astigmatism, labeled here astigpar, decreased from 7.3 on the left to 2.6. That's why he had to get a lighter form of glasses. That's a big drop. Emilio said this is the first time his astigmatism has decreased in the 20 years he has had the problem. Usually, every year, it got worse. And even in the 5 millimeter zone, which is further away from the center of the eye, there was still a decrease from 9.6 to 6.5. So Emilio is on his way to the future now. Woo-hoo! Did I say he had his blinders on in the Blu Room? He had his blinders on in the Blu Room. It wasn't just about the ultraviolet medical lamps. Beautiful. Here's the full chart for the medical folks in the audience or watching online. I'm not able to interpret this. I do know that it's the right eye for both of these. On the left is from September 3rd of 2015, and on the right from January 19th, just a few weeks ago, 2017. And even just looking at the color chart, I can see there's a difference in the color charts that are interpreting what his cornea is doing in its changes. Thank you, Emilio. Grazie mille. Next, we sent an email out about this one because it was very exciting. So you may have read the email, but it bears reviewing in the context of the work that we're doing here, which is about hope and change for each of us. And that our daily focus, maybe our daily focus doesn't bring us the instant miraculous change, but it opens a door to possibility, and we're drawn to do something different. And that door leads to the very change that we had made in our mind, now reflecting in the environment as a new neighborhood of possibilities and new experience. Nikki, in Canada, bone marrow cancer remission after 9 days of Blu Room treatments. Now there's a story. Nikki was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, that's bone marrow cancer, in 1990. She took chemotherapy that continued for 5 or 6 years, and went into remission after 5 or 6 years of weekly chemotherapy and all of that goes with that. In January of 2016, the cancer returned. In June of 2016, she agreed to start weekly chemotherapy again for another round of 5 or 6 years. She's also a student in the work, and she was doing her focus. And she heard about the Blu Room. She didn't live near the Blu Room, but she made a special trip, a Blu Room vacation. In October of 2016, Nikki went to the Blu Room in Saint-Sauveur, Quebec, with the intention of receiving a miracle. Just like at Lourdes. Just like attitude is everything. She had 17 treatments in 9 days. She was under medical supervision. She brought her records and said, here's what's going on. What can I do with the Blu Room? And the consultant said, do this. So she did. 17 treatments in 9 days, so sometimes that's twice a day for several times, morning and late in the day. When she returned home, she went to her oncologist, who was shocked to see that Nikki's IgA, that's the myeloma cancer marker, IgA stands for immunoglobulin type A, that her IgA had dropped so rapidly from 19.01 in January to 1.63 in November. Wow. Her oncologist was shocked. And I'm so glad she went back to her oncologist to confirm the miracle, to get an update, to incorporate that data into her focus and her treatment plan. That's wisdom. So here we have, on the 28th of November 2016, her lab results at the Thunder Bay Clinic. And down in the center lower section there in the middle, the IgA reading is 1.63. That's normal. That's why the oncologist was shocked. And Nikki also brought a copy of the history of her testing from this recurrence. So we can look at the IgA line, and we can see that on the 18th day of January 2016, it was 19.01 H high, very high. High. Your cancer has returned high. She got a follow-up test in May 9th, 2016, high, 18.02. Now, she was focusing. She's making change on focus alone from January to May. But she wasn't satisfied with that, so she said, oh, all right, I'll start the chemo again to protect my body while I work on my attitude. Wise woman. Comes to the Blu Room after coordinating with the practitioner who was overseeing the Blu Room, says, here's my history, what do you recommend? The practitioner says, twice a day, come for 10 days, 2 weeks if you can, and let's find out how that works for you. She came, she went back, she got a follow-up test. Get the evidence. That's like doing field work and getting the card. And there we have on the 28th of November 2016, a beautiful, very normal IgA marker. Shocking for some. Delightful. Happily shocked. The normal range for IgA, as a reminder, is 0.7 to 4 grams per liter. a level of 1.63, right in the normal range, indicates the patient has achieved remission, Nikki's oncologist was gladly happy to stop the weekly chemo 4.5 years early. Woo-hoo! Attitude. See, the medical community wants us to get better. They're sincere about wanting to help. And they understand the shaman effect. They understand the power of the white lab coat and the stethoscope and the authority and the responsibility that they bear because so many people come in and say, please fix me. And we can turn that around without shunning the medical community and use them. And they will be thrilled to work with us, for the most part. Nikki, I knew my cancer was gone because of the miracle I had received in the Blu Room. I felt great. My skin pigment had increased and my mobility is normal again. I am elated and forever grateful to have received such a great gift, but she still went back and got the test, even though she felt great and she knew she had been healed. So she made an extra effort, and thank you, merci beaucoup, Nikki, because that's a gift to the future. Would you please summarize with your partner? Beautiful. Beautiful. How's your hope meter? Coming way up there? Way up there. We all have this ability. Every discipline, every time we come down out of C&E or sit up out of twilight or candles or the mirror or the walk, and our personality has been anesthetized from all of that passionate blowing or that deep focus. And the personality has been turned off for a while so that something greater can take its place. And then we find evidence of that change in our environment. Whether it's the card on the fence that the body has come to, the arrow in the target, or a manifestation in our lives, or somebody saying, wow, I don't know what you've been doing, but keep doing it, it's working. Can I get a copy of that report, please? Sure. Do you mind if I let the local media in on the story? Would you be willing to talk to the media about my experience with you, Doc? Yeah, okay, sure. Or, no, I don't know. I'm going to show the lab report. You saw, and you'll see from time to time, there's black squares on some of the lab reports. There are some countries where it's the law that you cannot reveal the physician's name without their written permission. And so we respect that. We're a global organization. But you're also going to see sometimes where the physician is like, wow, yeah, sure. Tell everybody, I'd like to have more patients like you. You're who I went to school for. Come back, please. All right. More book recommendations before we go on. The first one, and this is a repeat as well, Into the Light by William Campbell Douglas II, MD. This book was first published in 1993, and it's all about ultraviolet light therapy dating back to the late 1800s, right up until just before World War II, when it was an approved FDA very common procedure in a variety of mechanisms, and still is today. But after World War II, it got, set aside because there was more interest in drugs and chemistry, and that's had its time, and antibiotics has had its time, and now that in some areas they're running short on drugs and antibiotics, interest is arising once again in ultraviolet light therapy, in wound healing, post-operative care, to prevent infections after surgery. And in fact, one of our beautiful students, who is also a physician, has just gotten approval from the medical group to incorporate ultraviolet wound care therapy in all of their practices and to study the benefits. And there are several other places, UCLA, maybe it wasn't UCLA, one of the University of California places, where they've got a full protocol. It's just normal for them now. So the future is at hand. And this other one, a classic, first published in 1985, The Body Electric by Dr. Robert Becker, an orthopedic surgeon, all about the electromagnetic body. We would call it perhaps the light body, something beyond just the chemistry. But there is a long history, even though it's not popular yet, again, of the electromagnetic nature of the human system and how it interacts with its environment and how it communicates, both at the chemical cellular level, throughout the entire organism, and constantly interacting with the social environment in which we find our bodies most of the time. So Dr. Becker's book is back, The Body Electric. Great reading. You're going to be hearing more about this as the year unfolds. Next. We are treating that 13-ounce entity that leaves the body on death. Dr. Matt. Hi, Dr. Matt. He stayed up late in Europe. He's nearly done with a 3-week tour of Blu Rooms, starting in Japan at the Class 101, and 4 Blu Rooms in Switzerland and Austria, where he has been receiving rave reviews for his beautiful mind. And this was just spilled out of him at one of the recent presentations after some of the stories that he had been told. So again, you've got stories about your Blu Room experience. Tell the Blu Room folks where you go. Write it down, send it in, contribute to the future. And if you've got medical records, great. If you don't and you can, great. If it's something esoteric, great. Because the Blu Room is not just lights. It's divine geometry. It's medical lamps. It is blue lights. Those are all parts of it. But it's a portal to elsewhere. Jay-Z has said it. It takes our personality to stasis, just like the disciplines do. And in that stasis moment, something greater can happen. A little slice of heaven on earth at your local Blu Room. I refuse to let anything blind me to possibility. Jay-Z Knight. And bless you for that, because it was possibility, as you saw in her video presentation and in her lecture last summer and the summer before. Well, I've been having these experiences, and I kind of think it'd be like this, and it has to be like that, and what do you think? And Matt says, let's build one. Let's find out. Let's design something and have an adventure. One of the stories that Matt was told, and I'll pass it along, I'm sure he'd do a better job of it, but it led up to his comment about healing that entity, the soul, the spirit, once the personality has been knocked out of the way. There's a story of an old man, not an RSC student, but he had lost the will to live after his wife had died recently. He withdrew, became a shut-in. He was on his way out, basically. He just happened to live in an apartment building that had a Blu Room in it. And something drew him to the Blu Room. Something. He left his little apartment, went to the Blu Room, and said, I don't know why I'm here, but what do I got to lose? And went in and laid down, and his wife appeared to him in the Blu Room. So a moment ago when I said it's a little bit of heaven on earth, I did mean that literally. And here's a story. And so he's out and about again, and he's happy to say the Blu Room saved my life and brought me back to life. So what story do you have that maybe you've held back from sharing because you didn't want to be judged, you didn't want to be ridiculed, you didn't want to be told, oh, that's all in your mind? Yeah, and it's my mind, and my mind is my reality, thank you very much. What story could you share that might change somebody else's future? Turn to your neighbor and share. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We do have stories to tell, don't we? If your story relates to a Blue Room experience, please record it and share it with wherever you have your Blue Room. Help the people that have invested in a Blue Room get the word out. The Blue Room sells itself. It does. And maybe your story will be just the story to convince somebody else who's had something similar. Try it. And once they go in, and their personality goes to stasis, and they experience a little slice of heaven, a portal to a realm beyond the light, instead of going to the light, they'll take over from there. Their deeper mind will know. And so we can help the growth of the Blue Room just by telling our stories. Tell them to each other, tell them to the media, tell them to the Blue Room owners where you go and you support that work. How many of you at some time in your life has says, oh my God, I just wish somebody could put this feeling into a box and sell it? Even if it wasn't related to C&E or, finding your card or making it to the void. But you had a moment, and there was that thought, if only somebody could just somehow box up this experience, this moment, this sensation, I'd buy it. And other people would buy it too. Well, we have heaven in a box, an 8-sided box, an octagon, a little piece of elsewhere, the Blue Realm. And we have the ability, through our own experiences, not hard sell, just telling a story. And it's your story. And it'll touch somebody. Now, I'm going to segue to a topic that is next in the future technology of health that is unfolding here, and you've heard a little bit about it. And once again, the mind of a master, J.Z. Knight, endeavoring to heal her knee from lifetimes of issues, manifest once again, and traveling down to Oregon, as you've heard the story, to her doctor down there to get stem cell injections. And she comes back from her second trip, I think, and she's focusing on her knee, and she's thinking, well, why do I have to go to Oregon to get stem cells? Why can't we have stem cells in Washington? Well, that's all it took. I refuse to let anything blind me to possibility. And so stem cells have made it to Washington. So a little bit of an introduction with a story first. Perhaps you remember Austin? Yes. Stem cell therapy versus rheumatoid arthritis. A grudge match. Because Austin has an attitude that he is not willing to give into as a young man with rheumatoid arthritis. And if you've known him over these past several years and you've interacted with him, he works at the Olympia Blue Room, you've seen for yourself his personal evolution. So I asked Austin, who was willing to try stem cell therapy, something new, if he would give us an update, and he sent this letter. I will start by saying I dove into stem cell therapy without much information, but with an open mind and heart. My first treatment was an IV infusion, intravenous infusion. About a week after the first treatment, I noticed that many side effects from the Enbrel, which is his rheumatoid arthritis injection, and other Western medicines completely went away. About a week after his first treatment, I noticed that many side effects of the Western medications went away. Consistent headaches, nausea, cold sweats, and hot sweats that would affect my body had decreased drastically. To feel comfortable in my skin has been a huge improvement and better quality of life, even with that bit of relief. I also had some reduced swelling in my knees, but it wasn't very noticeable. Now, has this guy got an attitude or what? It's like, hey, he's just happy not to have night sweats and nausea. Even if he's still got the pain in the knees, he's not seeing that as a failure. My second treatment was a straight injection in my left knee. It was a bit of an uncomfortable experience, but all of my intent was to heal my knees. My left knee has been the most painful of my joints. After my injection and a Blu Room treatment, I went to work and noticed that the pain was lessening every hour. Side note, I have been using the Blu Room 2 to 3 times a week, and after every treatment, my joints feel more fluid. I feel more relaxed. Since stress causes inflammation, this is very helpful to my condition. I also feel that my healing is on a stronger and more vital path to my future growth and success. There's more. My third and most recent injection was quite astonishing. I had 1 cc directly into each knee. After 2 weeks, I noticed the swelling in both knees subsided drastically. They felt smaller, and the heat from the inflammation was hardly present. I've been living with chronic juvenile rheumatoid arthritis for about 5 to 6 years now, so I know when something is different in how my knees feel. My most recent discovery was that my right knee, which is the less severe one, was actually healing. That word is powerful and means a lot. It is something that I haven't said for quite some time about anything, let alone my knees. So I decided to test this out. I was standing in my room and lifted my left knee to put all my weight on my right knee. Then I did a half squat. Hardly any pain present. That was a big eye-opening experience for me and gave me another large dose of hope. He closes by saying, "Thanks to everyone, you all have played a massive role in my happy, healthy, and productive life." And thank you, Austin, for sharing your story with all of us. God bless. Next, Sharon is here at this event. On January 6th this year, Sharon fell during registration at the Create Your Year weekend event. She went to urgent care for x-rays. She had fractured both radial heads. I had to look that up. In the yellow, you'll see on the left and on the right what the radial head location is. And here's a nice diagram from Google Images. The radius bone goes from your elbow to your wrist. The radial head is at the top of the radius bone, just below your elbow. So, right here somewhere. Both of them. Depending on how severe the fracture is, you may need a cast or surgery. In older adults, they don't specify. Fractures heal in about 8 to 10 weeks. So that's the data from the medical system. Good data to know. Along with her daily deep focus, Sharon did 3 Blu Room sessions per week, had a stem cell IV infusion, and used an EMF pulse stimulator. Her x-rays on January 28th showed the fractures had healed in 3 weeks. The orthopedic surgeon said, "Awesome healing, unbelievable." No, you don't need a cast, and apparently you don't need surgery either. So she went back and got a follow-up set of x-rays. And then she took the x-rays to the expert, the orthopedic surgeon, and he went, "Wow, that's totally unbelievable, only 4 weeks out." And she said, "Well, actually, those x-rays are from last week, so it was 3 weeks out." Awesome! Awesome. And I met the orthopedic surgeon. If you know Shannon, who runs the Yelm Blu Room, her husband Lonnie is the MD orthopedic surgeon. He works both in Utah and here, and he did the consultation. He was actually here at the CYY event, and it was his second or third event, and he's like, "She fell." He's like, "Oh, what a great opportunity." Not to do surgery or put her in a cast, but Blu Room and stem cells, because he's involved with the stem cell process, and the electromagnetic pulse stimulator, which he's been working with because he read Dr. Becker's book. Nice. Very nice. So as excited as he was to have an opportunity for a fellow student in the great work to break both of her elbow bones as she was coming to an event to create her year, in the name of science. So at her follow-up, he's like, "That's awesome, the fractures have healed." And he says, and she's like, "Yeah, but I'm still a little sore." I was like, "Well, yeah, but the bones are healed," because he's the orthopedic surgeon. He's like, "Yeah, soft tissue, that'll, you don't need casts, you don't need surgery. Great focus, love it all." So there are people in the medical community that love to do just this kind of thing. They're not the bad guys. There are people with licenses and training that can lend their expertise to our adventures when we retain the power to ourselves and use them as our consultants, gather the data, seek their opinions, both on what they think and what they think we may want to do, and take that into our work. And so we have a huge buffet. And both Ramtha and Jay-Z, as long as I've been a student, since 1990, have always said, use what's available. Use the whole spectrum. Because it's all useful data. And now we have even more useful data. And Dr. Paulo Solani is a part of a research foundation that is doing FDA-approved research on stem cell therapies. As an orthopedic surgeon, he uses them in the direct injection. He uses ultraviolet lamps in his post-operative wound care. He's building a Blu Room at his research facility in Utah, right next door to the MRI, so they can just run people right through and back again and report the data. So the future of science is unfolding before our eyes, and we have participants sitting all around us. Beautiful. Beautiful focus. Thank you for your participation. I think you heard in this afternoon's Musings Part 2 telephone call from Jay-Z from the last day of Create the Year that she had, in addition to the injections in Oregon last year, she had at least 2 stem cell infusions where it's put into the vein and circulates all through the body, and that she was seeing her kneecaps for the first time in 2 years. And more recently, She too has started experimenting with one of the pulsed electromagnetic devices. More information coming soon. The research hasn't been published yet. That's a teaser for April. And she mentioned to me just the other day that she woke up the first morning after she had used that device after receiving a stem cell infusion, and her knee felt tight, which, if you have a teenager in your family, you would know that's a good thing. It's tight. So stem cells navigate according to signals. And one of the signals can be our focused thought. It can be a pulsed electromagnetic device that's tuned to do that, or it can be the natural inflammation in an injury or wound area that draws the stem cells to start their healing function. So I have one more clip on the topic of stem cells. This is just a brief highlight of a story from somewhere else of what's been accomplished with stem cell therapy that's going on right now. And this one comes from Canada. May we have this video, please? That was a little clip that Jay-Z found on Facebook, which is one of the modern research publication outlets. It's not formal peer-reviewed research all the time, but it is a source of what's going on out there in this now widely democratic, everybody has access, written across the sky for all to see, modern technology. Okay. So we're going to get a little more specific now. Do you need to take a stretch break? No? Okay. So stem cell therapy in a variety of research formats has been around for a while, but it hasn't been broadly available for a while until very recently. So this is going to be a bit of an introduction to the vocabulary that you can add to your growing knowledge base about the future technology of health that is rapidly becoming available to all of us, and why, as individuals interested in immortality, we might be interested in this particular outlet. Stem cell therapy. There are two types of stem cells, and I'm simplifying it, but it's all reasonably accurate. I don't have a license, I don't have a PhD, I don't even have a master's degree from university. I'm working on being a master by conquering myself. Okay, so the first kind is embryonic stem cells. And that's when the sperm and the ovum come together and they start to create an embryo. The second kind is everything else. Now, I lumped it all together as everything else because as you start to read about stem cells and stem cell research and stem cell therapy and the controversies around it, you will come across a wide range of names of stem cells. But basically, there's the embryo and the embryonic stem cell that has been much involved in the debate under President Bush, federal funding, a whole history there, because that only comes from when the sperm and the ovum get together, which to some models of reality and some beliefs, is the beginning of human life and therefore should not be sacrificed for science. So the plus side of embryonic stem cells is they can pretty much become anything. The downside is politics and attitude. There are some other downsides, but that's for later. The everything else is generally called adult stem cells. That doesn't mean they're from adults. It means the stem cell itself is an adult cell. Even if it's a baby stem cell that's no longer part of the embryo, it's considered an adult stem cell. And so baby stem cells is what I'm going to be talking about eventually, because that's stem cells that don't make it into the baby but could have. Whereas what we have in our own bodies, which is a source of stem cells, are what Dr. Lonnie refers to as old people stem cells, with all of the lighthearted but deep implications of that. All right. Stem cell vocabulary. Now, I'm going to borrow the RSE model of the triad for this introduction to stem cell vocabulary as a guide. It's not exact science, but because you're familiar with the triad and the levels of consciousness and energy, I've overlaid some of the terminology about stem cells with the triad just to give a general correspondence in a simple way that we're all familiar with, so that we can bridge into something that may be less familiar right now. All right? So here's our triad. Up at the top, 7th level, infinite unknown. Sperm, ovum, could be anybody, could be anything. Come together, analogical moment, creation. Next, totipotent, totally powerful. Sometimes you'll see it written as omnipotent, as in omniparticles. Totipotent. These cells can become anything. These are stem cells. Next, pluripotent. They have a plurality of possibilities, but they've made a shift from being total potential. And that shift is pluripotent stem cells can become anything but the placenta. Anything but the placenta. So would you review with your partner, please, the first 3 levels of stem cell vocabulary? Okay. So again, simple first introduction to stem cell vocabulary for many of us. I'm no expert. I used Mr. Google a lot these last 2 months. Sperm and egg come together. Totipotent, omnipotent. That new cell starts to do its thing, which is a fascinating study that I'm not going to explore tonight, but I encourage you to, because it's the origin story of the human being, the vehicle that we incarnated into. And there's some lovely, lovely readings about human embryology that correspond very, very well with what we have learned about incarnations and the bands and the molding of a lifetime. But for now, from totipotent can become anything to pluripotent that can become anything except the placenta, which is a magical organ. Moving down the triad, Multipotent. Multipotent stem cells can become any one of 3 different subcategories. So they have multiple potentials, but not as many potentials as the level above. Yes? We know that from our training. Yes? Okay. Now, an interesting thing about these upper levels in this model is stem cells are not polarized. They're round. They don't look like much because they haven't polarized yet. They haven't specialized. They're unpolarized, above the light. Once we go into polarization, we're going into specialization, and these are no longer stem cells. These are now some of the 220 types of cells that specialize to give us this beautiful body. So stem cells come in 3 broad categories: totipotent, pluripotent, multipotent. And they're not polarized, which is a good thing. And a bad thing. It's not good or bad. So correct. Thank you. Okay. Now, the 3 things, the 3 categories of specialization, I have written to correspond with the lower levels of the triad. And these are polarized cells. They've differentiated, they've got identity, they're specialized, their orientation, they're on a mission from God. They're wearing dark shades sometimes. Endoderm is the deepest within level of the lines of 3 cells, corresponding roughly to the light. Mesoderm is in the middle. Meso means middle. So it's the section of stem cells that are sort of in the middle between the inner stuff and the ectoderm, which is the outer stuff. So starting from the bottom now, ectoderm is all of the cells that are on the outside, almost. So that's skin and eyeballs and our brain. The brain, and this is fascinating, the brain is part of the lineage of the ectoderm. So the brain, even though it appears to be inside our skull, is actually on the outside too. Our skin is a part of our brain. Our brain is engaged with the environment. And so it grows from the ectoderm. In between is the mesoderm, and then deep inside is the endoderm stuff. And I've got a slide coming up about the different kinds of stuff. But this is just vocabulary. So would you review the lower 3 types of specialization, because you're going to come across these phrases at some point. Just briefly, ectoderm is the outside, mesoderm is the middle stuff, endoderm is the deepest within stuff, like the light body is deep within. Mesoderm in the middle, endoderm deep within. All right. So this is an introduction. We're setting the stage for knowledge. We're setting the stage for an experience, making known an unknown. So from the light down, we've got 3 different areas of specialization of cells, just like we have 3 different levels in the triad. These are not stem cells. These are functioning cells that have a mission. They specialize. They've become different. And from the 4th level up, that's the realms of the stem cells, and they can become anything except a few things that they can't become. Stem cells are undifferentiated, which means unpolarized. cells that can develop into more specialized or polarized cells. Cell polarity refers to some of the differences in the shape, the structure, and function of cells. Almost all cell types exhibit some sort of polarity which enables them to carry out specialized functions. When a stem cell divides, each new cell has the potential to either remain a stem cell or differentiate into a more specialized type of cell. So that's one of the unique characteristics of stem cells, is when it divides, it can reproduce itself in one of its daughter cells and also create a specialized cell. So you still have a stem cell left. So they're not limited in their lifespan because they're not polarized. They have a longer potential. They're more powerful. Now this is the regular chart. It's a busy example, but it's the sort of thing that you're going to find as you begin to do your own inquiry into why would I want to get involved with stem cells and stem cell therapy? What's the benefit to me? So we'll start at the top, and you can see the red triad sideways there, getting from tiny to large, is the direction of differentiation, increasingly specialized. And as things become more specialized, they become less plastic, less flexible. As we've learned from our studies of neuroplasticity, once you hardwire, it's more challenging to become flexible. And so it is at the cellular level. On the left side, you see in blue, light blue, all by itself, a totipotent stem cell, an embryo. And then it changes, and it becomes pluripotent. And the pluripotent stem cell can do anything except be the placenta. And then it can further downshift to become multipotent. And they can switch back and forth. They can change back and forth. One of the biggest changes in the research that I found is that pretty much all the books are out of date. The field is changing so rapidly. Even Wikipedia is out of date. Google is kind of out of date. So I found myself going to the scholarly journal articles online because I was endeavoring to understand why the particular type of stem cells that Jay-Z was attracted to bring to Washington, what was it about them that shone out above all the rest of the field that's been out there for a few years? And I found it. It's because these particular type of stem cells that we're coming to have the ability, like a pluripotent cell, to become any one of the three specialization lines. So in a way, corresponding to a pluripotent cell naturally, because the cells come from the umbilical cord and the placenta. All right. Sources of stem cells for stem cell therapy, as it's been for a few years now. You can get stem cells from bone marrow, and that's an ongoing clinical operation. You can get stem cells from fat. Technical term is adipose tissue. So around your belly and the love handles, you've got stem cells. And there are clinics that will take a needle and stick it in and suck out the fat, and then take it into the centrifuge and spin it, and then inject the stem cells back in and not the rest. I heard about that maybe 5-6 years ago, and I thought, that's pretty cool. I got stem cells in my fat. More fat for me. So there's a value to our fat. And has our teacher not been saying that? You don't want to be skinny in the days to come. He didn't say it's because you're storing stem cells, but hey, we wouldn't have believed him back then, maybe. Umbilical cord blood. So this is the blood that didn't make it into the belly button. And for many years, there have been services, both private and public, that allow families to store the cord blood, because not only does it have cord blood stem cells in it, that can help family members with blood-related diseases, but it's got a lot of other cool stuff in the plasma for that family or people that have similar blood types and matches. So these are the most common that you're going to hear most about as you go out and do your own research, if you choose to. Next, the umbilical cord itself. There's actually stuff in the part they throw away. It's called Wharton's jelly, after Mr. Wharton. And it has stem cells in it. These are one of the sources of the stem cell serum that Jay-Z has found and brought now to Washington State and soon to Blu Room services all around the world. And finally, the placenta and the amniotic fluid are a rich source of stem cells. Now, one of the wonderful things about these last two is these stem cells are not specialized. And it's what's called immune privileged. They don't have any self-identity markers yet, which means they can be used by anybody. One of the physicians that I was watching and reading and stuff, he says, these stem cells in particular are like one size fits all. You don't need to be the right blood type. You don't need to have a number of factors that other stem cell sources require. They're universal donors. Would you briefly review with your partner? Immune privileged. That means that you won't have an immune reaction if you get these stem cells, because they don't have the identity markers yet that would trigger your immune system to say, that's a foreign invader. It's stem cells that haven't made it into the infant yet, into the fetus. And so they have, in addition to being stem cells, they haven't been influenced yet. Okay, I promise, I'm almost done with vocabulary. Mesenchymal stem cells. These are the particular kinds of stem cells that are able to differentiate into any of the specialization, over 200 types of specialized cells. Mesenchymal stem cells from the Wharton's jelly in the cord and the placenta that is normally disposed of after birth can be harvested. And what Jay-Z fondly calls the mad scientist that has worked out a process to do that, now, in addition to banking the cord blood for people that want to save that for their family, if they donate the cord and the placenta, then he does not charge them the usual fees to store the cord blood. And he's able to process the placenta and the cord, not the blood in the cord, that goes to the family, process that and extract the stem cells, and that's what's available. And they don't go into a lab to be grown in a culture and expanded. That's other styles. So there's no cross-contamination possibilities. It's right from the placenta and the cord into the deep freezer and then into the clinic to be delivered. And so these are baby stem cells. They're roughly 9 months old. And they don't have any associated self-identity markers, antibodies, attitudes. and they're just ready to help. Tell us what to do, boss. We're on the job. And one of the researchers that I was reading about, she was actually putting these baby adult stem cells into petri dishes with a membrane divider next to adult stem cells, old person stem cells, that are still stem cells, but they have been subject to a lifetime of being in my body or your body and all the attitudes and all the environmental factors, so they don't work quite as well as baby stem cells do. But when they're put in a petri dish next to baby stem cells with a membrane, they communicate back and forth, and the baby stem cells release some of their markers and some of their nutrients that migrate through the membrane and actually rejuvenate the adult stem cells. How's that for super cool? And the doc is funny. He says, I think these stem cells are smarter than we are. But we'll find a way to get them to work. So they're busy trying to build machines with stem cells on scaffolding, and they're on that journey to what our teacher once said, which is, there are certain civilizations that don't fly in metal craft, that their ship is made from a stem cell. Well, modern technology is hot on the trail of technology in the lab to grow organs that can be then transplanted because they don't have any markers on them, to grow blood so that you don't have to have donations from people that need to be screened. In the meantime, you can go direct to the source now at our local Blu Rooms and soon at Blu Rooms around the planet and just get the baby stem cells right from the cord and the placenta and let them go to work for you straight away. Okay. Two more. Autologous, also called autogenic, allogenic. Auto means self. So the autologous stem cells are stem cells from your body that are taken out, worked with, and then put back into you. Allogenic stem cells mean stem cells that came from some other body and are given to you. So these are two terms you're going to see as you look into this. And since what we, through Jay-Z and our partnerships, have had access to are allogenic. We're getting somebody else's cells. And we're not working with our own stem cells directly, which is where Jay-Z started, getting them sucked out of her fat and injected into her knee. And she's told that story. So this is an evolution of her journey that we have an opportunity to participate in now and not waiting for something that's finished in a lab years from now. The ability of researchers to isolate multipotent stem cells from cord blood and postpartum placentas is a very exciting development. These stem cells can turn into any of the body's 200 cell types and theoretically live as long as the body does, unlike most cells. They also have many more reproductive cycles left in their lifetime compared to stem cells from adults. So these baby stem cells have a very long life ahead of them because they were on their way into an infant, a fetus about to be born. And so we get them, and they're happy to live a long time and rejuvenate our current stem cells who are like, oh, new kid on the block, yay, let's do something. And that something is going to be related, of course, to our attitude because we're the ones that are giving the instructions. So there is hope. And medical science and future science is unfolding all around us if we only have the eyes to see it. Wow. You know about telomeres? If you haven't heard about telomeres, you're going to hear about them tomorrow in a brilliant teaching that involves a favorite character in our school called Gladys. And perhaps now you will listen to the teaching on Gladys with new ears and new eyes. For those of you that are unfamiliar with telomeres, typical body cell that's specialized divides between 50 and 70 times. As a cell divides, the telomeres on the ends of the chromosome get smaller, And this aging of the cell appears to correlate with the overall physical aging of the body. However, stem cells express an enzyme called telomerase that acts to lengthen telomeres, allowing stem cells to divide many more times than most body cells. That's one of their secrets. And that's one of the values of having stem cells, old or young, as they're part of the body's repair mechanism. Okay. Now this is another video clip Jay-Z asked us to play about telomeres. What's suddenly new and exciting in the world that we've been hearing about for at least 10 years, if not longer. And while the clip in itself is interesting, all the different things that the authors talk about in their book, the last minute is the most relevant to us because they have their own way of saying attitude is everything. Let's play this, please.
I wondered why some 60-year-olds look 40 and why some 40-year-olds look 60. Well, some scientists call it the telomere effect.
And joining us live from New York is Nobel Prize winner Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn and her colleague Dr. Elissa Appel. Thank you both for being with us. Dr. Blackburn, does this mean that when somebody says 60 is the new 40, there's now science behind this claim?
Well, there's a certain amount of science in the fact that we can have some influence on the way one of our aging processes works, and that's the aging process related to telomeres. And just to very briefly tell you what telomeres are, if we think of a shoelace, like this one, the very tips of the shoelace are important to protect the ends of the shoelace, to make that shoelace actually function. And if the tips fray away, like this one here, then that doesn't work. So telomeres are like the tips of our chromosomes, our genetic material, our DNA. We need them to protect our DNA ends. If it doesn't happen, if they fray away like this, that will lead us into higher risks for the diseases that accumulate more and more with aging, such as cardiovascular disease, such as poor immune function, inability to fight off infections, even dementias and diabetes. So keeping telomeres sound and robust turns out to be something we have a lot more control about than we had thought before. And we wrote a book about this to tell you all the different ways that have come from the research that inform people about what they can be doing.
Mm-hmm. Now, see, I had this uncle, right? So he was like 50, 60, but he looked like he was in his 30s. And he never was a drinker. He was never a smoker. He worked out a lot. Do those things really factor into that truly?
Those are some of the factors that do factor into having robust telomeres that keep people in good shape and extend their health spans. Mm-hmm. And
how was his mental attitude and his robustness to stress?
Oh, he was good with that. He worked out to kind of help with the stress levels and stuff.
Yeah,
perfect.
Absolutely. And in fact, our studies have shown that working out, any kind of vigorous walking, can really be stress buffering. And so people with a lot of stress tend to have shortened telomeres, but if they do have some activity, even maybe just 10 minutes a day, that protects them. It protects their telomeres.
Now, Dr. Appel, your colleague there had mentioned as long as we keep these telomeres in good shape, as long as we keep them nurtured and healthy, how do we do that? What's the best foods to nurture those telomeres?
Okay. So there's a big list of ways. What you should do is different than what Chandrea should do. So you've got to really assess your lifestyle, and mindset to see where you need the most, some tweaks to your day. So to answer directly about foods, it turns out that foods that are high in antioxidants that soak up all the free radicals protect telomeres. So
fruits, vegetables,
yes,
whole grains,
yes.
Much less sugary sodas.
Mm-hmm. And the processed meats are unfortunately bad for telomeres. So skip the bacon and the sausages.
Yeah, we don't advocate.
Dogs.
Right, we don't advocate going crazy on diets. We're just saying really change the balance of what you eat and be aware of it, and be aware that you can keep telomeres more robust by doing things that really are not very hard to do, like introducing very moderate sometimes amounts of exercise if you were sedentary before. And so what we're trying to do is show all of the studies that have really good evidence behind them in terms of what kinds of effects people can produce on their own telomeres And remembering your telomeres are listening to your thoughts is a very helpful thing to know.
So your mindset, how you respond to stress. Some of us have exaggerated responses, but we can actually tweak that. There are lots of ways for us to be more stress resilient, to get some distance from the stress, have a calmer stress response, and that's important to telomeres. We know that. We have some mini meditations on our website. People can try those. Use those little moments between things for restoration.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for your time today. Telomeres.
Thank you.
Thinking about the future. Thanks, ladies.
Please summarize telomeres, attitude, walking, getting rid of stress by, as we call it, focusing, briefly, and then we'll wrap up. Excellent. Now, of course, the Nobel Prize winner and her partner do have a book out. That's why they were on Fox News. And the book is called The Telomere Effect. It's available in our Quantum Cafe. And I just checked the index in the back. They don't mention stem cells. It goes from Starbucks to stress. However, one of the nice things about stem cells is they manufacture the enzymes telomerase, which repairs the telomeres as the stem cell divides and kicks off a specialized cell and another stem cell so that it can continue to have a long and prosperous and happy life. So, coming to the closing part here, right now, stem cell therapy is available in Washington State. It's available at Absolute Health Clinic in Olympia, which also has a Blu Room, and the Blu Room is included in a stem cell therapy session. It's also available here at the U Wellness Center in Yelm, and there's a lovely photo of Dr. Lonnie, Shannon's husband, and he commutes twice a month from his practice in Utah and his research facility and his surgical practice, comes out here for a long weekend and is quite happy to be involved in the future of health technology here and then take back to his research associates and get more grant funding there. Okay. So this was from our most recent email that got sent out, so you have a little bit of an idea. StemVive is the particular serum product that is from the placenta and the cord blood. Excuse me, the cord, not the cord blood. That is extracted and deep frozen straight from right after the cesarean birth to the deep freezer and to the clinic. And of course, all of the donors are screened, they're candidates. If it all passes the screening requirements, then they get to have their family's cord blood stored for free for life. And they also, if they have people in their family that have the orthopedic injuries and conditions that respond well to direct stem cell treatments, they get those as well. And the rest of the material then is donated to make the serum that's now available to clinics. And we will be developing international shipping right now. The company can ship to Canada already. We're working with our Canadian Blu Room folks to get that operation underway soon. The company can ship to Mexico, so that will be next up. And we're working with the FDA and their exporting department to find out what we need to do for all the other countries. The cord bank and the stem cell extraction is all FDA approved. The research is under FDA database management. So as a candidate for stem cell therapy, you fill out the paperwork. It's reviewed at the moment by Dr. Lani. Soon other physicians will be on board. If you meet the criteria and you're willing to have your data submitted for the research database as well, you get a prescription. It's a medical deduction because it's a prescription. If you have a health savings account, you can use that. Get a tax break. A 2 cc intravenous infusion, which is the standard, is $3,000. That covers the prescription, it covers the consult, the treatment, the Blu Room, and the follow-up. And you will be asked to fill out questionnaires, and then somebody will call you in 6 weeks and again in 12 weeks to do follow-up so that they can collect the data as part of the FDA research program that is contributing to this process to the future. Both locations here in Washington are offering interest-free financing. And as I said, a complimentary Blu Room, once you have your stem cells, is included in the session to take everything to stasis in that beautiful little slice of heaven before you walk back out into the earthly realm as a new attitude. Here's the contact information. You can also go to bluroom.com, click on the locations page to contact either of these facilities for more specific information and see what your interest is in incorporating this future health technology now. Thank you all for your attention.